So our topic today, sorry for the huge delay, just every time I come here it's like I'm setting up for the first time. That's usually the experience. But so the topic today, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Patty. I am a clinical pharmacist that has worked in mental health for over like 15 years. And I've also studied applied positive psychology and resilience training. So applied positive or positive psychology is the science of human flourishing. It is composed of different things like some of the subtopics we study, like positive affect, meaning, purpose, achievement, engagement, vitality. So it covers different aspects. Some of the things in positive psychology have a crossover with personal development and like coaching that you would maybe find in corporate settings for like how to respond to how to give a proactive response versus a destructive response and all these things. So it covers a wide range of things. Some of the things I've studied include things like emotional intelligence, okay? So this presentation is actually based off of, it's a combination of what we've learned in emotional resilience and emotional intelligence, and a book that was written by a professor who studies the scripture on especially the Psalms, and his name is Walter Brueggemann, and he talks about praying the Psalms, and he breaks it down in a way. When I read that book, I actually realized there's a crossover, and that's why we made this presentation. So I'll kind of take you through it. If you guys have questions, let me know. Usually when I will tell you all that as we go. Usually when I give a presentation, it's not 100% didactic, so you can ask questions, tell me your experience and all that stuff, just so we can like stay awake after work. And it's a good way to figure out how to like apply things. Does that make sense? So we'll start off. So what we're going to talk about is building emotional resilience through praying the Psalms. And what does that mean? Now, we all grew up reading or praying the Agbeya. And I think most of us know that the Agbeya is supposed to mimic the sacrifice of Christ. So what happens at the beginning of that day, like the Good Friday, basically, right? So some of the things that I'm going to be covering is I'm going to talk about what happens in terms of our life in an emotional cycle. All right. So usually we say that through our life of faith, we often cycle through different states, right? Most of us start quite innocent. We haven't really been exposed to a lot of tribulations or temptations or trials, and there's an innocence and a security in God's love, right? Then we often go to a stage of feeling completely insecure, maybe question if God has forgotten about us, questioning if we've done anything wrong, because when you're young and there's an innocent, you correlate your goodness with God's goodness for some reason. Like if I'm good, God is going to be good to me, and if I'm bad, then God is going to be bad to me, right? Like so sometimes that's obviously a misunderstanding, and that's not how things work. So you might go through a stage where you feel alone or like painfully disoriented by your suffering, and that's where you kind of disconnect or feel insecure in your faith in God. And oftentimes something happens to you to bring you back to a place of security, and it's unexpected. This is why many Christians will tell you a story where if to anyone else it's not a miracle, but to them it's like it was a miracle. God worked in my life, this has happened, and so on. So you might go from feeling insecure to completely and unexpectedly secure again. And that results in a renewal of faith through God's grace, right? So let's read this part. So I'm going to give you, this might be hard to read on the screen, but try to follow me. So when Walter Brueggemann, the author of this book, writes about the Psalms, he actually comments about the difference between Proverbs and the Psalms, and how Proverbs writes of wisdom and the ideals, the ideal life, the ideal behavior, the ideal way we're supposed to engage with our neighbor, our enemy, our loved ones, right? and how the Psalms speaks of the reality of the human experience. So there's a wide range of emotions. Sometimes there's happiness, sometimes there's hate, sometimes there's vengefulness, sometimes there is desperation, sometimes there is complete doubt and kind of dismantlement of like, you know, your foundation in terms, or your trust in God, right? This is the Psalms. If you read it, it goes through all of these emotions. And he says, the collection of the Psaltery is not for those whose life is one of uninterrupted continuity and equilibrium, meaning it doesn't go on same as always, everything's great, everything's in balance, everything's perfect. That's not what the Psalms is about. Such people who seek that should stay safely in the book of the Proverbs, where it's the book of the ideals. I personally love reading the Proverbs. But does it always reflect real life? No, but it makes you aim for a better, an ideal way, or a way of you want to live or you want to pursue certain things in life. So it talks, so the book of Proverbs, which reflects on the continuities of life. But few of us live that kind of life. Most of us who think our lives are that way have been numbered, desensitized, and suppressed, so that we are cut off from what is in fact going on in our lives. So what is he referring to? What do you think he's referring to when he talks about that? So if people think their life mimics the ideal, which is the Proverbs, he's saying there must be disconnected from something. He's actually referring to a psychological phenomena, which is like emotional numbing, where you don't really process anything too deeply. You accept things and you go with the flow, and you think everything is okay, but there's things that you're not addressing and you avoid, right? Okay, and in the Psalms we find, so he says the Psalms are, okay, it's fine, don't touch it, I have a feeling it's going to tip over. I feel like we can make it a little bit sharper, but I don't want you to touch it. I just feel like I'm going to go like, okay. So the Psalms are a reassurance to us that when we pray and worship, we are not expected to censor or deny the deepness of our own human pilgrimage. So that's a really deep thought if you think about it. The Psalms allow you to be fully human, and to be fully human, that means you can say and feel whatever you need to say and feel. Sam, did I not say that? Touch it? Thank you.
It's just, you know what, it's just the angle, that's why it's so...
It's fine.
Focus on the left is off.
I understand. That's okay, thank you. So he says, it denies the deepness of our own human pilgrimage. Rather, we are expected to submit it openly and trustingly so that it can be brought to an eloquent, passionate speech addressed to the Holy One. It is experiences of being overwhelmed, nearly destroyed, and surprisingly give life that empowers us to pray and sing. So often we forget that with every death there is a resurrection. That is the life that we live. This is the calling that we have as Christian, and that mimics God's life. Similar to the Agbiya, it mimics that Good Friday, right? He is taken, he is tortured, he suffers, he dies, and then he resurrects. And our life has the same cycle. Hi, I'm Patty. How are you? What's your name? Marina, nice to meet you. Okay, so what is emotional resilience? Emotional resilience is the skill that you can build that allows you to remain calm when facing trials and tribulations, instead of feeling overwhelmed by uncontrollable negative emotions and thoughts. Does that mean you don't feel it? No, it doesn't. Does that mean you don't think about it? No, it doesn't. It just means that when something hits you...
You don't act on it?
No. You can process it and move past it. You can allow it, you can experience the full emotion, but not get stuck and feel like, so some people when they have such negative emotions, they go into deep depressions or deep anxieties, and it lasts for very long. They have a struggle of bouncing back. So resilience is about, so naturally we are all born with a natural level of resilience, and resilience is the ability to recover from falling emotionally, mentally, from hopelessness, basically. Often when you get hit by a tragedy, a family loss, a health issue, a crisis, a loss of work, whatever, it hits you hard, but the more resilient you are, the faster you can emotionally recover to face life, basically. So it's about how fast you recover. But naturally, as a human being, most of us do recover. Oftentimes, when you're hit from more than one domain, it's harder. Oftentimes, when you don't have social support, it's harder. Oftentimes, if you have a family history of certain illnesses, mental illness, it's harder, right? So, but that's basically what emotional resilience is.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
So when we go through something, isn't it normal and common to go through the 5 stages of grief? Because John in the Bible himself went through that.
Right.
Like, you know, the denial, anger part.
Right.
And then like, acceptance and
right.
such.
So I can't really speak too much about that because that's not my specialty, because past psychology is a little bit different. But my understanding is yes. Like, I mean, I had this conversation with Abuna Boutros as well. We had a similar talk with a group for the Arabic meeting downstairs. And we were talking about emotional resilience. And my understanding is that I think grief is always part of, like, grief is not only when there's death. Grief is like a lost sense of identity, you lost a sense of inclusion, you lost a sense of belonging, you lost a sense of safety, you lost something, so you grieve it. So grieving is a natural human thing. And you will always, you won't always go through the 5 stages. Some people get stuck. So sometimes you'll find people who get stuck in the angry stage, and they're just angry people because they haven't processed certain things, right? Some people, it's not given you will process everything. Hi, I'm Patty. Hi. What's your name?
Peter.
Hi, Peter. I'm Patty. Sorry, it's very weird for someone to do that, but I do that. Not to stress you out, but to say hi, to know your name. So Peter, and sorry, behind you, what's your name again? Marianne. I'm gonna have to remember this. And then I tried to remember these guys, the 5 in the back are kind of like question mark. But anyways. Okay, so did I make sense? So grieving will happen. Okay.
Another topic, another question for later. Like,
That's
I was gonna say, like you said, some people get stuck in whatever stage, but that looks like this requires another lecture.
Yeah. I'm not a specialist about grief, but I think you should bring it up to Abuna Boutros to give a lecture about grief, because when we were talking about emotional recovery, he did open it up, and he was talking about, yeah, that sounds like the grieving process, and I said, yeah. Like in some things you do go through, like you'll see it at the end of this presentation too. We'll go over through some of the things people cycle through in terms of emotions when they spiral down or they spiral up. So spiral down, things get worse emotionally. Spiral up, they're recovering. Well, at the end, don't speed through things. Okay, so key concept in emotional resilience is noticing and naming emotions. It is a very important skill to be able, whenever something happens to you and you are reacting in a way that you feel like it's impulsive, whatever it is you're reacting, your emotion, it feels like it's just, like, I don't know, whatever the emotion was, you feel betrayed, you feel elated, you feel devastated, you feel, envious, whatever the emotion, if it hits you, it's important to be able to notice and name it, because when you notice and name it, you can understand and you can easily parse through, why am I feeling this? If I can name what the emotion is, I can go back and say, oh, if I can say I'm feeling envious, oh, because this is what's happening with this person is not happening with me. I wish I had that. I can go back and I can understand myself and I can understand the situation and I can move past the emotion, right? But if you're feeling something you don't understand and then you become irritable, agitated, anxious, it grows, right? And it becomes harder for you to navigate those feelings when you are with people who are triggering them because you don't understand what's happening. Does that make sense? So one of the key skills in emotion resilience is to notice and name. So people usually learn the skill by doing journaling. They write down what how the day went and how they felt in certain situation, and just try to kind of think a bit through their day and their emotions. But I'll show you an exercise at the end. And then second thing is self-awareness that nourishes self-compassion and self-care. So there's a self-awareness that can be very harmful to you, and there's a self-awareness that can be very good for you. A self-awareness where you notice something is happening and it's making you uncomfortable, and let's say, oh, I notice that I always get angry when this person walks in the room. Right? Let's say that it's an emotion I'm experiencing. If I can go and like blame that person and put it on them, or I can be like, why am I angry? And I can sit with that. And if I find out why I'm angry and it makes me feel bad about myself, like if I blame myself for it, like, oh, I shouldn't be angry, I'm this and I'm not good enough, or whatever negative narrative I say, that can be destructive. But if I understand what's happening and I have a sense of compassion about myself, like to myself, and I don't judge myself for feeling what I feel, but say, it's okay, I'm human, I need just time to process this. You know what I mean? The way you talk yourself impacts your mood. Some people, certain types of depression are deepened by negative self-talk, okay? When something goes wrong and then you're like, I hate myself, I'm not good at anything, do you understand what I'm saying? You can go into this horrible loop. I'm gonna have to be very aware of time because we got started really late. What's our closing time, Sam? 10:30? Can I keep you guys to 10:30? Please? I can't wrap it faster than that. Okay. So understanding that negative emotions limit our ability to see opportunities and find solution. So when you are dealing with a negative emotion, there's something called, so what happens is when you deal with negative emotion, what happens is your vision of what's happening in front of you gets limited. So I'm angry at, what's your name again? Alfred. I'm angry at Alfred. I don't notice anything that's happening that's good in the room because I'm so angry at Alfred. I don't care that Mina's paying attention, I think. Or I don't care, like, you know what I mean? All I know is I don't know why he came, he shouldn't have come. And now so you hyper-focus on the cause of whatever is causing the emotion. You actually don't see things. And sometimes you don't see ways out. So when you're in a crisis and you're dealing with a negative emotion, you often catastrophize because you don't see a way out. And that's why it's good to have social supports during crisis, because people who are not feeling the same negative emotion can actually help to talk you out of it so you can see things clearly. We also understand that positive emotion enhances our ability to see opportunity and find solution. When you are feeling better, when you are feeling good, when you eat well, sleep well, have good energy, have social supports, you begin to notice opportunities to solve the problems you face in life. You can think better, your executive function is more active. When you are in a negative state, that part of your brain is not as active. Sometimes it shuts down completely because you're in the crisis mode. Does that make sense? Okay. And then by orienting your minds to the good, we can minimize the impact of negative emotions on our well-being. And then we also know that gratitude is a powerful emotion that can nourish our sense of happiness and connection and well-being. So gratitude. What is the one prayer that is in every part? What is the one prayer that's in every hour of the Agbeya?
One prayer? There's two. There's three.
No, don't get technical. You know what I'm saying. Like, what is the one Agbeya?
Thanksgiving prayer and then
so the Thanksgiving prayer is in every hour of the Agbeya. You know exactly what I was asking.
Okay.
Okay, so the Thanksgiving prayer is in every hour to remind us to always orient ourselves to the good and to be grateful and to remember God is with us. He has been, He is, and He will always be, right? So those are things. So I'm going to kind of explain. As we go through this, talk about the Psalms, you'll see where this all comes in, okay? So, moving from unregulated emotions and shame. So there's things that happen as you heal from hard, like strong emotions, or as you process them. You move from unregulated emotions and shame in silence, because when you don't talk about something and you sit with an emotion and you don't write it, you don't walk, you don't move, you don't do anything, it's not good for you. Emotions get stuck in your body. You end up having physiological symptoms sometimes. So, talking about it helps, writing about it helps, walking or moving, dancing helps, moving the body actually helps with emotional processing. All of those allow your body and your mind to kind of work through those emotions. So you go from unregulated emotions of shame and silence to self-awareness and honest self-expression. You need to be able to understand what's going on and express yourself. When people censor their emotion consistently, or when other people censor other people's emotions, I'm going to highlight that because that's really not a good thing. When someone says, I'm feeling this, and they're like, oh, stop complaining. or stop whatever. We need to give people room to say whatever they need to see.
Some people go like, oh, calm down, like as if you're telling them calm down.
Or, yeah, so when you dismiss people's emotions or emotional expression, you're kind of killing their outlets. And sometimes when people are in a hard time or trauma, they repeat the same negative emotion, so it's hard on you maybe, but that's on you to regulate that interaction, not for you to shut them down. Does that make sense? So if you're with someone who's repeating a story that is, they've been hurt, you go see them or visit them knowing that they're going to say that story because they're still in pain. So you have to prepare yourself, but you have to know your limits, and you don't have to stay for too long, but you continue to be a support. You have to figure out how to regulate that piece if you're the person who gets impacted or whatever. But what I'm saying is that it's not good for us to dismiss emotions in conversation often, because this is what human connection is all about. It's not just about the rational and logical. When people say, oh, just be rational, or just be logical. I don't know why you feel like this. Or be positive. Like, just be positive. Switch. You need to speak whatever is bothering you. You have to speak it out. So be wise with the friends you speak to. Not everyone can handle your sorrow. It's very simple, right? Just not everybody can handle your sorrow. So it's when you speak to the right person, there's healing. When you speak to the wrong person, it gets worse. That pain lasts for longer. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So, and then you go to finding rest in hope of the resurrection. So what does that mean? So in the Psalms, you'll see this pattern. It starts by, through the Psalms, you'll see that there's the psalmist exercises his right to petition his grievances. And this teaches us that we have the right to speak our truth, whatever it is. All the things that you're not supposed to say because you're a Christian, you can say in front of God. I hate that person.
In love.
Like, I really hate that person. Not in love. No. Yeah, to people in love. To God, you say what you're thinking. You don't have to put that filter. Why? Because He knows your heart. So you say, God, I hate that person. I need you to help me, help heal me, help me figure out why, and help take it away from my heart. But you have to say it. You have to say you have to be honest with God. It's never going to change if you're not honest with God. You know what I mean? He's not waiting for you to say whatever it is you think you should say or think about that person. He wants to know how you feel.
You don't have to say you hate the person. God knows. You just have to ask for it.
You don't have to. Alex is politically correct. He's like.
But you have to ask for the help.
Right. What I'm saying is that you need to be emotionally honest when you stand before God.
So Abu George actually talks about this. Like, one of the very hardest feelings is like having emotions or feelings towards another person, so whether that's jealousy, envy, being envious, hatred, resentment, whatever that is, to be able to actually get rid of those. And he acknowledges the fact that it's very hard to get rid of those feelings towards people, especially if they hurt us. But he said that one of the things that really help us is actually going to God and telling Him, filtering it out and telling Him, yeah, God, I hate that person. I'm jealous of that person. I'm resentful of that person.
Be an open book before God, because, like I said, when you notice and name your emotions, you are closer to healing, and there is no better person to hear that than Christ. If you tell a friend, oh, I hate this person, whatever, you feel like you're gossiping. You go home and you're like, I don't know why I said that. I feel so bad. Maybe she'll tell someone else, and you worry, and you sit there with and then you shame yourself, and then you get angry, and it goes into this horrible cycle. So be honest with God, because that is your safest place to be. But be honest about what you're feeling, because you can't lie to Himself. And if you're not honest about your emotions, you can't move past them. Okay? And then we find that in the Psalms, you find the words to articulate the state of the soul as it seeks the Savior. So the Psalms, the beautiful things about the Psalm is that they give you emotion vocabulary. So they name certain emotions that you don't know. Most people don't know how to name emotions. They just say, I'm irritated. I'm happy, I'm sad. Those are the three that they're always stuck on. I'm irritated, I'm happy, I'm sad. More than this, they don't know. Do you get what I'm saying? Not a lot of people say, oh, I'm excited. Oh, I'm, I am disoriented or feeling disturbed, or like they don't know the nuances, right? And then that helps you, as you read the Psalms, you'll see it'll reorient you towards the source of eternal hope, which is Christ. So what does that look like? So, exercising your right to petition your grievances, what you do is that you are bringing, you're breaking the silence of shame, because whenever there's shame and you don't speak your truth, whenever you don't speak what's happening inside you, oftentimes is because you're ashamed. You're ashamed of your thoughts, you're ashamed that you feel this way, you are ashamed. And when you do that, you are condemning yourself, and you're staying in that state, and you're not moving past it. So you break that silence through speech. And the Psalms give you speech, right? They give you the right words to express, and it goes from different things, from positive to negative. So if you look here, it says on the blue, every night I flood my bed with tears, I drench my couch with my weeping. My enemies trample upon me all day long. I feel like I'm being stepped on. How many of us can actually go to a friend and say, like, if you think about it, like when you talk to people about people, how honest are you going to be about something like that? Someone hurt you to that extent. I felt like I was stepped on.
You would be honest about those with your father of confession, I would assume.
Maybe. I lie in the midst of lions. I feel like I'm overwhelmed by lions. You know what I mean? It gives you that. So the imagery is really great because it allows you to give the extent of your suffering, and that relieves you. I don't have to sit in suffering. I can tell God the extent of it, and it feels like I'm lions. I feel like I'm drenched. I feel like all these things, right? And often, depending on the Psalms, it actually, like, it evolves. So let's see the next one. Has left the session. Oh, it got paused. Let me just use the, sorry. Okay. Okay, so you'll find also, so in these parts, you'll find words to articulate what your soul is feeling. So some of the really great imagery that you'll find in the Bible, if you read the bottom right, it says, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. So you envision that God is this strong place, the strong rock. You have a huge support there, right? For you are my refuge, a protector, a refuge, right? A strong tower against the enemy. Let me dwell in your tent forever. And what is tent? Shelter. Again, protection. Oh, to be safe under the shelter of your wings. So usually the imagery of the wings comes often in the Psalms, and it's supposed to remind you of Christ on the cross, right? So there's a lot of, you'll find there are Psalms that it gives you words of comfort. If you speak to someone and you say, you're my support, you're my place of safety, you're this, and you're speaking to them as you speak of your struggles, you also begin to feel more secure and more safe, right? So the Psalms take you from a place of distress sometimes to a place of where is my comfort? Oh, Christ is my comfort. And it sits there and creates this beautiful imagery of, like, what does that look like? He's my refuge, he's my tent, he's my tower, he's my rock, right? And then you go on to it takes you to, well, if Christ is all these things, well, he's my source of goodness, and he's always there for me. So you'll find Psalms that end up saying, the Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and plenteous in mercy. He will not always hide, neither will he keep anger forever. You start contemplating God's goodness. You go from speaking whatever is causing you shame, whatever the extent of it, anger, resentment, hate, to reflecting that I can bring this shame before Christ. I can articulate this and bring it before my Savior. And then the Psalms go into describing who Christ is. What is the quality of his heart? What is the quality of his love? So he's not just a place of safety, but he is the source of all goodness. And in him, I can't be shamed. I can't stay in shame. So it takes you from the pit and pulls you out, if that's the right description, right? So you'll find, actually, there's an, I don't know if I have it here, when we were talking about, no, I don't have it here, but we should, okay, so what we were talking about, this is the same slide I had before, so you guys, so let me take you through this. So here are some highlights of certain emotions. So there's something called an emotion wheel. So you will often get exposed to this, maybe in therapy or just online if you look up emotional wheels. But they're used often to help people who can't express themselves find the words to express themselves. So the therapist might say, "I want you to take this emotional wheel and write about your day. And I want you to be more specific with what is going on." So if you're not sure, you know, it has a certain, it goes in a certain way. So like it breaks it down for you. So this is a more elaborate one. And this one, the way it works is that, let's say you can't really see this, but let's say you are happy. Then you think, why? Oh, am I proud? Was there like a good achievement? And then maybe break it down to, oh, I was successful in a project, right? So
primary emotions is secondary emotions.
yeah, it breaks down the intricate parts of the emotions. So you have a better way of understanding why you feel the way you do. If you say, I feel disturbed, well, what's disturbing, right? So, and then you break it down until you're like, oh, I felt unsafe, or I felt betrayed, or I felt, right? And those are important emotions because if you can figure them out, you can actually go back to the source and address it. If you felt betrayed, then you know, okay, you need to focus on this relationship. Is this a healthy or not healthy relationship? Can you go back to that, you know, colleague or whatever and address and say, hey, I felt that you betrayed me, and have these conversations and work out your issues. If you don't know what's happening inside you, you can't work anything out with anyone. Really, that's the hard thing. So emotions, when you know your emotions, things are a little bit better. Okay, so let's talk about this. I wanted to actually see if I can take you guys through one round of like a full psalm so that you can see what I'm talking about the way the psalms work. In terms of taking you from a place of despair and actually taking you through a process of revelation in terms of what's going on, and almost recovery and hope in Christ. Okay? So I think we can start with... Okay. There's one that I thought was really good. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Psalm 31. I'm just going to read this. I need you guys just to listen if you want to follow. If you want to close your eye, you're welcome to. If it makes it easier for you to focus, that's fine. So Psalm 31 says, "In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. Turn your ear to me. Come quickly to my rescue." So you can tell it's a state of desperation. "Be my rock of refuge, a strong fortress to save me. Since you are my rock and my fortress, for the sake of your name, lead and guide me. Keep me free from the trap that is set before me." So he's saying, I feel trapped in this. "For you are my refuge. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Deliver me, Lord, my faithful God. I hate those who cling to worthless idols. As for me, I trust in the Lord. I will be glad and rejoice in your love, for you saw my affliction and knew the anguish of my soul. You have not given me into the hands of the evil, but have set my feet in spacious places. Be merciful to me, Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, my soul and body with grief." So this is a full expression of suffering. "My life is consumed by anguish and my yearning by groaning. My strength fails because of my affliction and my bones grow weak." Again, he goes again to describe the extent of the suffering. "Because of all my enemies, I have the utter contempt of my neighbors and an object of dread to my closest friends, and those who see me on the street flee from me. I am forgotten as though I was dead. I have become like broken pottery." So he expresses the extent of his shame. Okay? "For I hear many whispering Terror on every side. They conspire against me and plot to take my life. So he's basically describing negative rumination, when you keep thinking about really negative things all the time and you think that there's no hope. But I trust in you, Lord. I say you are my God. My times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies, from those who pursue me. Let your face shine on your servant and save me in your unfailing love. Let me not be put to shame, Lord, for I have cried out to you, but let the wicked be put to shame and be silenced in the realm of the dead. Let their lying lips be silenced, for with pride and contempt they speak arrogantly against the righteous. And then the last part of the psalm is basically a glorification of God and who God is. How abundant are the good things that you have stored up for those who fear you, that you bestow in the sight of all and on those who take refuge in you. In the shelter of your presence, you hide them from all human intrigues. You keep them safe in your dwelling from accusing tongues. Praise be to the Lord, for he showed me the wonders of his love when I was in a city under siege. So that could be symbolic or true because it's David's story, as Christine knows. In my alarm, I said, I am cut off from your sight. So in my moment of dread, I thought that God can't see me. I'm cut off from your sight. Yet you heard my cry for mercy, and I called to you for help. Love the Lord, all you faithful people. The Lord preserves those who are true to him, but the proud he pays back in full. Be strong and take heart, all you who hope in the Lord. So he went from great suffering, great despair, and expressing the extent of that despair to Christ or to God, and then expressing also the extent of shame. People don't want to look at me. I am rejected, as if I'm dead, as if I'm broken pottery. I feel like I'm worthless. And then he goes on to say, all I think of is terror. So the negative ruminations that nothing is going to get fixed, everything's going to be horrible. And then he, in that moment, remembers who God is and speaks of God's glory, and then begins to praise the Lord and is reminded of God's works in his life. So in the Psalms, it takes you from your lowest point to, so it actually reorients you from the bad to the good, from evil to the source of all goodness, which is God, in one psalm. Not every psalm is set up this way, but this is a really nice psalm to think of it that way. So when people are going through sadness, depression, anxiety, they're always asked to say, think about your thoughts. What is the pattern of your thought? Are you doing a lot of self-blaming? Are you doing a lot of negative self-judgment, condemnation? Are you making yourself, it's as if you're walking in the street and you yourself are the one who's hounding yourself saying, shame on you. Like, you know, as if people are walking around you and shaming you, but you've internalized it in your inner voice. So the way you speak to yourself in your mind and your heart impacts your ability to see good, because we said negative emotion narrows your sight, you only see the problem. And if you speak negatively to yourself, you become your own problem. And there's a sense of self-dread. So you never want to get to that. And this is why the Psalms help us remember who Christ is and how we are worthy of love and goodness because he found us worthy and he loved us first, right? So there is the way it actually takes you out of that emotion. So let's talk about the upward spiral and the downward spiral. So there's emotions that usually happen sometimes. They'll go through this cycle. But people need to understand their emotions, right? So there's something, when you say upward spiral, that means sometimes you go from a bad emotion to a good emotion and you slowly kind of recover in your recovery process, right? And sometimes you go from a bad emotion to a worse one. So sometimes boredom, so this is one cycle actually goes like this, right? So sometimes boredom can lead to pessimism, procrastination, other things. You start feeling useless, you start feeling like you're not doing the things that you were called to do, right? And sometimes we can take action when we know where we are. So if I'm disappointed and I know that I'm disappointed and I can figure out what I'm disappointed in, I can address it. But if I don't know, all I know is I feel sad, I go through life feeling sad and I'm like, I don't know why I feel this way. Okay, if I'm disappointed in, let's say, my promotion, the way I'm treated at work, whatever, I can say, okay, I need to either find a better position or find some be in a different department because my boss is giving me trouble. Like I begin to know like what's disappointing me, I can address it, right? If I'm dealing with really boredom happens when you are capable and you're in the wrong place. You are highly capable and you're in the wrong place. Sometimes from boredom, creativity can come. Some people, when they're bored, they can become creative and they can come up with great things. Sometimes when they're bored, they feel useless. And that can take you in a different direction. Am I making sense? Right? So when you can figure out where you're at, you can figure out where you want to move towards. Okay? And you can also figure out how to solve a problem. If I'm feeling a sense of worry, something is happening that I'm concerned about, is there a way I can address it? I can't just worry forever. It has to be addressed, right? And is it a realistic worry? Am I worried of like impending doom? Or am I worried about losing my job? Why am I worried about losing my job? Is it realistic or is it fictional? Is it because everybody's losing their job or because I'm being treated badly at work and I feel like, oh, we've lost clients and we might actually, I need to look for a job. So I can address it. I can look for a job. I can talk to my boss, right? So if you have an emotion, you can address it. So this is the idea, is that once you know your emotions, hi.
Hi.
How are you? I forgot your name.
It's Kiro.
Kiro, yes.
I didn't get the hi, I'm Patty when I came here.
I'm sorry. I know you came in kind of, because I knew you from before. I'm like, maybe I'll remember you through the talk. I drove them both away. Did you see what happened? Okay. So, Kiro. That's okay.
I wanted to ask, because I get the whole CBT aspect of it, but what I will say is, when you're in a state
Sorry, Kiro, what's your background? Professionally, don't mind.
Oh, I'm an engineer.
Oh, okay, yeah, we had this conversation. Yeah. I remember you were like more on the technical side, because you were very like rational, not in a bad way. Like,
No. So that's the thing, is I've struggled with the emotional. That's what I'm saying, is you're assuming that you're in a strictly, CBTs is a strictly rational thing. But
okay.
when you're in an emotional state, now to go back to the rational, it's two parts of the brain or something.
You get a therapist.
That's what I'm saying, is sometimes it's more than that. Like I love it with CBT, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
But
Or a coach.
It's so difficult to just like, be like, why am I worried? And like think about it, and then like I'm not worried.
Yeah, so there's different practices you can do to help reveal to yourself what is going on. So you're right, when you're in an emotional state, you can't really deal. So when you're in an emotional state, writing helps. Why? Because when you write, you reiterate what happened today. For example, you're feeling something, you're not sure why. You write down what happened today, and as you write, sometimes you process when you started to worry. Oh, I thought about this, that triggered my emotion. So sometimes it gives you the pause you need to rewind and review what happened in the day, okay? What's missing with the lifestyle we're in right now is time for reflection, okay? A lot of people are struggling with their emotions right now. Even people that were the most sensible like 7 years ago pre-pandemic. People are like walking around saying, I'm angry and I don't know about who, I don't know about what, I'm just angry. 5 years were taken from my life and I don't know what happened, right? So a lot of people are walking around with unexplored, really strong emotions. So getting a coach or a therapist help, or a good friend who is good at a friend who knows you well enough to be able to help you to figure things out and you can trust. Some people not everybody's good with positive feedback, not even positive, honest feedback. A good friend will give you honest feedback. Good or negative, they'll tell you what it is, what you need to hear. And you'll take it from them with love. You won't take it in you're criticizing me or whatever, right? So yeah, when you're in a negative state, you can't see clearly. So the journaling disconnects you from the emotion and gets you to do something physical. So people forget that physical motion allows you to also move your emotions. So when you exercise, do you not feel better? Okay, this is for guys and girls. I know some guys, like men, swear by it because they don't know how, but it works. And it's not just the adrenaline, because sometimes you get stuck in the stress of whatever happened today at work. But somehow after you're out of the gym and you're heading home, it doesn't feel as bad. The catastrophe that you witnessed 5 hours ago doesn't feel that bad, and you feel like you can solve it. You just need time to sleep, and maybe tomorrow morning is another day. Do you ever have that feeling? I think we've all had that feeling. So that's the idea, is that we forget that emotions, if you're stuck in a negative emotion, do something physical if you can't journal. Go for a run, go for a walk, whatever, but do something physical, and then if you can get a chance to reflect after, or sit down with yourself, you might have some clarity. But yeah, not everybody can afford a therapist, and not everybody has the right person to talk to, but these are some ways you can self-manage. Does that make sense? Yeah, I don't ascribe to the whole, like, you need your emotions and you need your rational side equally, and they're both very powerful. I don't ascribe to the idea that we need to rationalize everything in our life, even our emotions. Sometimes it's not about, you need to feel what you feel, and you need to just, once you understand it, you need to move past it. Sometimes you need to let go of things. Resentment is one of the hardest emotions to address. When you feel like a sense of injustice, abandonment, anything like that, I think it starts you, when you understand your emotions, it starts you in the grieving process. So if you know you're feeling angry because you feel resentful because that person abandoned you, you can grieve parts of this relationship, but also grieve your expectations of that relationship. And then maybe you can let go now, because you understand the limits of this relationship. And that's the beauty of growing up. We don't talk about we always talk about, like, you know, the bad thing about growing up, but there's beauty of growing up, is that once when you're young, everything is rosy. People are good. We're all created in God's image, and it's all true. There's true goodness in everyone, but it doesn't translate to good behavior all the time. It doesn't. People do things out of survival where they hurt each other. That's just human nature, right? So, did I kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I guess more, you know, I was thinking as well in terms of like emotional stability, and I looked this up once, and the qualities of being emotionally stable, not having the emotions kind of take over. And they talk about IQ versus EQ, and all of this other stuff. I mean, I don't know if a lot of that is all just kind of like to sell books and such. But
no, there's truth, but I do feel like some things have been labeled as something. So there's a lot of richness in emotional. So there's a lot of richness in the Orthodox spiritual writing about managing our emotions and managing our thoughts. Phenomenal writing, actually, and it's therapeutic to read if you've actually read it. Now compare it to the modern positive psychology or psychology books and emotional intelligence books. They're bringing ancient wisdom in secular times in modern words. And the beautiful thing about science is science just validates what we've been taught over the years, but it packages in a way that it's accepted by all people of all faith. You know what I'm saying? So it's true. Yeah, emotional intelligence is a term that just got coined in the 1990s, I think, and it was by, what's his name? I can't even remember his name. But what happened, and this is maybe a pet peeve of mine, is a lot of the things that are supposed to be used for us to get closer to each other and heal our relationship is sometimes being marketed as strategies for working well with other people on teams. So you'll see it in corporate training often, and it's all about managing teams, and it's good things, but it's not. It sells with the corporate. That's how it sells, because it's being advertised or marketed to the corporate world. But this is everyday skills. Communication is everyday skills. Self-awareness is everyday skills. Right? So I say, whatever you read, if you can take something good from it that can make your life richer and deeper and allow you to stay longer in a state of peace with yourself, with God and man, then it's good. Not everything is perfect. Even the way even the way they send the messages in these books, sometimes how to influence people, and the books that talk about like ways to influence and win friends or whatever. It sounds like how to get things to your own advantage and get what you want out of people. Or it could be, when you read it, how do you communicate better what you want? Because when you communicate clearly, people understand and they'll work with you, right? but the way it sells, it's about you. It's about feeding the ego, right? Not necessarily recovery, but feeding the ego. So, yeah, and I think, does anyone have any other questions right now? We've kept too long left. I think that's like the wrap up. Okay, so let me talk about this really quickly because you were asking me about the book. So the book is a scholarly book somehow. I don't know anyways, I got it, I read it, I loved it. But it's called Praying the Psalms by Walter Progman. And it says, I think it's engaging, it's called Engaging Scripture and the Life of the Spirit. And I want to mention this to you because you might maybe want to listen to this to the car tomorrow, just to kind of reinforce what we talked about. I came across this book when I was listening to this podcast, and I thought it was the best. It brought my emotional resilience training and the Psalms together in a way that I really enjoyed. So the podcast was called "The Place We Find Ourselves," and it's a therapist who's done a master's of divinity. So he's a Christian therapist who talks about different elements of, different things, everything from like anxiety to attachment theory to all this psychology stuff. Maybe some of it is not relevant to you, but episode 63 and 64 introduced the book that I was telling you about and the idea of how to understand the Psalms and how to experience the Psalm to help you articulate your emotions. And episode 64 talks about how do you get to a place that, let's say you're journaling or you're writing about what's happening, what emotions that you have. How do you get to a place where you heal by writing your own Psalms? Meaning that we have an opportunity to speak our truth in prayers. And when you read the Psalms, you get an idea of what a Psalm is like. It's basically an honest conversation with God, but it might be the honest conversation with God that David had, and you might not relate to everything. Sometimes you'll find a Psalm that speaks your truth, sometimes you don't. But it's important that in the Psalms as you're reading, stop and say what you're actually feeling. Add your own words, add your own experiences, right? And make your prayer your own. That's why even all the priests now say, when they talk about church prayers, don't just say the Thanksgiving prayer. Right? When you say the Thanksgiving prayer, pause and say what you're thankful for. Like, be specific, because when you're specific, your heart feels it. Your heart feels that gratitude. It's real for you. It's not just words that you're saying in the air. Does that make sense? So if you guys want to listen to it tomorrow, just thought I'd mention it, but that's basically it for today. Sorry, it was a very awkward start. And we've kind of rushed, but it is what it is. Does anyone have any questions, or are we good? Time for bed.
Jeremiah are basically something like that. The one we read on Good Friday, actually.
What? So, sorry, which one? Jeremiah?
The Lamentations of Jeremiah.
Yeah.
So it's really good. It's basically a style. He starts saying, "I am the man,"
Yes, the prayer that we say on Good Friday.
Yeah, it's actually really good.
It's like heart-wrenching.
Yeah, you see the swing of emotions, and then he switches and first he's saying, "I am the man,"
But it's the prophecy of Christ. So.
It is, but also I think I see it also be applied.
But that's what I was saying. We all go through the cycle, that cycle. We go through a Christ-like life cycle where we are secure with God, insecure, disoriented, feel abandoned, and then we find Him and we feel gratitude and we see God's grace, and that's the resurrection. So think of your life it's very different when you understand that when you suffer, you don't suffer alone. Christ suffers with you. And when you feel a sense of death, you don't die alone. Christ is dying with you. And that means that there's a day of resurrection and hope and recovery.
Yeah, when a lot of times we feel like God is not there or not listening, but in reality, God is actually, when we're crying, somebody, I remember said that once, believe it or not, God is actually crying when you're crying.
Mm-hmm.
He just
So, think of the stories of Him when He saw the women suffering and wept, or Lazarus, or like Christ showed real emotions, and all of them, like the anger, the frustration, anger with hypocrites, and suffered with those who suffered or had lost. It's the same thing, right?
If you cry, you feel sad. It says in Revelation that God will
wipe away your tears.
Turn them into happiness.
Mm-mm.
So, I mean, yeah, God will take your sadness and make it into happiness later, regardless of what happens. So yeah, he sees everything.
Actually, there was a talk a few weeks ago. Aunt Susan, she gave a talk about like trials and tribulations and how like in uncertainty, like it's so hard to see God because he's a lot of the times we feel he's silent. And I remember a friend of mine like was telling me like that sentence. It stuck with me. Says like God slept on a boat to tell us that his silence doesn't mean his absence.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. I think the hardest thing that people struggle with is God's silence. But it's a very real experience, and that's why the Psalms come in really helpful at times of silence. If you guys ever read the first hour, so what is it called? The first visual of the midnight hour. There's some beautiful prayers in there that we never actually read because none of us actually wake up in the middle of the night. But if you can't sleep, I'd recommend those because you actually feel like it will speak to a very human experience. But that's what I'm saying. It's there for you to reach out and read it anytime. Yeah. Okay, guys. It was lovely spending the evening and making you all sleepy and tired. Go home, sleep. Thank you. No problem.